Object Access Protocol. SOAP is a simple object access protocol. Now, when you already have SOAP is a well popular format of web services, one of the popular format of web services. But the problem is, when you want to go for a SOAP, what is the procedure that you have to follow? Let us see. If I want to use a SOAP API, internal communication will be in this format. Look at the format of communication. Now, this is a Java or else I am running a Salesforce. I'll make it Java. Some Java code is Java class. So the Java people made some SOAP API web service. So Java class public info. Int. Then I'm going to give return. Now, the same whatever the service is written in the Java application, the same service I want to give to Salesforce. Whatever the service I written in the Java, the same service you want to give to the Salesforce. When you want to give the same service to the Salesforce, if you give this Java program, the Salesforce people will not understand what is the Java. So, they have to give the format which they can understand. They have to give a format in which they can understand. So, two people are trying to communicate where both of them, their mother tongues are two different languages. Your mother tongue is Telugu, my mother tongue is Kannada. So, we both are trying to communicate. So, I am very much comfortable with Kannada, you are much comfortable with Telugu. But we want to communicate. So, if I know Telugu, there is no issue. If you know Kannada, there is no issue. Then what happens? We take care about some common medium. So, what is the common language? We both can speak English. So, the communication happens over the English. But similarly, you are Java and Apex. You are Java and Apex. Both of us want to communicate. When both of us want to communicate, then if you give a Java code, I cannot understand. If you give a your Apex code, you will not be able to understand. So what they have said, whatever the Java program they wrote, they will convert the program into XML, which is called as visual file. They will convert the file into visual. So in the SOAP API, web service is a descriptive language. Whatever the code you have written, you will be converting the code into visual file and will be giving to me. So once I give this visual file, Salesforce people will consume the visual file. Based on the visual file, generate an Apex class. Whatever the visual file they have given, the visual file is converted into public. What happened? Same Java class is created in the Salesforce, the same method, but it is converted into Apex. It's converted to Apex program. So then, whatever the program you wrote, same program was converted into Apex programming based on the based on the data what we provided. So whatever the class we got, the same class was converted into Apex programming. And the Apex program is given. So are you getting my point? So what happened? Here we have given a class which we converted into visual. The visual is taken, that is consumed, converted into Apex programming. So who is working as a mediator here? Visual. But the visual is an XML format of file. Convert your Java program into visual and take the visual and consume. When you consume from the visual, it is going to generate an Apex programming. Based on the visual, it is going to generate an Apex programming. So right now, this is a way of communicating between two systems. If two systems want to communicate using a SOAP API, the service provider has to create a service and convert the service into visual file and hand over this visual file to service consumer. Service consumer will take this visual file, convert it to corresponding Apex class and use it. Right? I hope you are clear with this. So, how to create a web service class? First, if you want to create a visual file, you cannot create a visual file for every Apex class. Only when you define a SOAP API class, for that class the visual file can be generated. So, being a service provider, how do you generate a visual file? If you are a service provider, how to define your own SOAP API web service and how to generate visual file. So, let us see this. In the Salesforce, I am a service provider. Go to the developer console. Then we have, if you want to define, class has to be global always. Web service class has to be global. Global class super. Then will be, if you want to define a SOAP API web service class, web service, static, integer, add, integer. I defined a simple SOAP API web service class. I defined type string, web service, static, integer, evaluate here. Right, we have defined the class. When you define the class, how do you define? Class has to be a global, class has to be a web service, class has to be a static, whether has to be a static, and whatever the whether you want to give it. So how to define the web service class? Web service. String last name. Then what I'm doing? List of account. Select. Here, whatever the data you. Now I want to give a response. How the response will come? How the response will come? I want to give the response in the form of XML. I want to give a response in the form of XML. So if you want to give a response in the form of XML, so how do you define? DOM dot document. Document equals to dot equal dot element element then going to give DOM dot. So we want to take a chain element. So root dot add chain element. Then I want to make it a loop. I want to make a loop for contact C, AGCS, because you are planning to send the data in the form of XML. So I am trying to create data in the form of XML. Okay. What I am going to do, DOM dot XML node, file name, chain element, last name, DOM dot XML node. So once you got a chain element, DOM dot XML node, what is the other node? First name equal to font dot chain element. The structure, I want to give list of all the contacts in first name, last name. So what I am doing here, lname dot add text node, what is that, C dot, this is our create. So what is that? Was we have a contact, last name, first name, close the contact. Like this we get all the things here. So similarly we have string result equal to, how do you convert? DOC dot to XML. DOC dot to XML. Then I was supposed to give return. So look at the format what we have. Web service, static, string, so whether. We are going to take a last name. Because in the last name we are going to write a sample query, get the data. Now what I am trying to do, create a root element, contacts, then come on. For the root element, root dot add chain element, what is the chain? Contact is the parent, chain is contact. Contact 1, contact 2, contact 3. In every contact, first name and last name. This is how we created. So there are two more keywords. What is that? List of contact, select last name, first name, phone from contact where last name equals to LA. Where last name equals to LA. Then we have DOM dot XML node, LName equal to font dot add chain element, last name comma. What was it? AGCS is contacts. Let me check out the bug here. Duplicate variable LName. Already given LName, so it should be last name. Right. So what is that? I create a web service. What is this web service? If anybody give me a last name, I'm going to get all the last name and first name of the corresponding contacts. Okay. Write a sample query, get all the contacts whose last name is matching, and send those people's data. So this is a simple one. Web service, static, integer, add. This is a simple service. This is I'm writing a sample query, getting the data, and the result I'm trying to send it in this format. Are you getting my point here? So both of these are what? What are these? These two are running in the form of what? Web services defined in the form of SOAP. Now, if you want to define any web service in the form of SOAP, it has to be XML. The response has to be an XML. If you want to define any web service if I'm a Salesforce, if I'm a service consumer, I'm requesting the data from you. The service provider always send the response in the form of XML in the SOAP API. If you are using a SOAP API, response will come always in the form of XML, no JSON. No JSON. Now, if you are a service provider, if I am a service provider, how do you define? Web service, static, return type of your method name with a list of parameters. What is this? Web service, static, return type, method name, parameters. And if you want to give it a response, generally we have to give the response in the form of XML. Now there may be a success message, there may be a failure message, but it has to come in the form of XML format. It may be a success or it may be a failure, but it has to come in the form of XML. Are you clear about the format? Okay. Once you created the class, go back to the web classes, setup, build, develop, Apex classes. Now we got a SOAP. Go to the SOAP, you got a SOAP file. Now what are you finding here? What are you finding here? Now this visual file, I generated the visual file. The class, whatever the class they defined, they converted the class in the form of visual file. Now this visual file will be given to service consumer. Boss, this is the visual file. Take this visual file and create the corresponding class file. So I am going to use this visual file. If this visual file is given to you, so service consumer going to take the visual file and convert it to corresponding language. Now it may be Java, it may be .NET, whatever it is. So what I am doing? If you are a service provider, it is very simple. It's straight away Apex class. So that's why I told service provider is always easy. So I have written straight away class I have given and I have given this class to service consumer. Now service consumer is going to get in this format. Service consumer is going to get this format. Okay. Now, what is this? First we need to understand what is the target namespace. What is the namespace? What is the target namespace? What is the schema? What is the TTD? Then you get a meaning of these words. The meaning of these words will be following. Then you are finding here what are the elements? Type, message, port type, binding, service. What are the 5 elements you are finding? Type, message, port type, binding, service. So in the visual file, whatever the visual file I have given, the visual file will contain 5 elements. What are the 5 elements? Types, message, port type, binding, service. Type, message, port type, binding, service. Let us start with the last one. Service. What is service? Service will have the name of the class in which the web service is defined. Now we are providing a web service. Where is this web service provided? Look at this. Where is the web service provided? SOAP call. What is the name of the class? SOAP call. So it will have name of the class which you provide the web service. Where is your web service available? SOAP class. Service will specify the class and the URL of the class in which the web service is available. It will specify the class and the URL of the class. The class we are going to call port. We are going to call the class as what? Port. The port and the address of the port is defined. Service. If I am providing a service to you, where my web service is defined, which class the web service is defined, and what is the address of the web service, that both are defined in the service. So again, service will specify port and address. Here the point is Salesforce will not support multiple ports. If you take a Java or .NET or PHP or other things, you can support multiple ports. But Salesforce, one class, one web service. It will not support multiple ports. Multiple ports means you cannot have multiple classes, multiple web service class in a single service. Every service will have only one class. So it only supports single port. Salesforce only supports single port. Now go back. The next step. Service. Service means binding. Binding means there are basically 4 types, highly classified 2 types. What is it? Document format, RPC format. So styles will be either RPC format or a document format. RPC format or a document format. We'll see what is the RPC, what is the document in the next session. But Binding, okay, binding will tell you which style you are using. Are you using the RPC style or are you using a binding? The RPC also RPC encoded, RPC literal. Document, okay, document literal, document encoded, document literal graph file. Okay, document literal graph file. So we have different styles. On the high end, is it a document or RPC? RPC is old procedure. Now everyone is going with the document style, right? Okay. Then in that class, what are the methods that we have? Port type will say list of methods. What you are providing? What are the methods? Add. Port type will tell you operations what are available in the web service class. When I am providing the web service, port will tell me in which class you are providing. Binding will tell me in which style you are providing. Port type will tell you in the port what are the operations. The port is when the class what are the operations you are providing. Web service operation. So service, binding, port type. Then we have message. Every port type will have one message. Look at this. Add request, add response. All the request parameters, input parameters are given as one message. All the output parameters are given as one message. One input message, one output message. The parameters may be 1, parameters may be 10, parameters may be 20. All of them together one message. So for every port type, one message will come. So port type, one message. So add request, add response. Show request, show response. Go to message. Then type. Type will tell you definition of each and every element. Right. That's what I told. I will discuss in the schema. It will tell you what is the meaning of complex type, what is the meaning of sequence, what is the meaning of simple type. Right. The definitions will be changed. The type will say all the elements which we are using in the service, their definitions are given in the text. All the services whatever we create, the definitions are given in the text. So how many elements are there in the visual file? 5 are there. What are they? Service, binding, port type, message, type. Service will have port name. Port name is nothing but class in which web service is defined. Then we have port with the binding. Binding will tell you what type of style you are using. RPC or document. The next message of port type. Port type will tell you what are the operations they are trying to perform. What are the operations available. The next we have message. So in the operation, all the input parameters are one message called request message. All the response, whatever you are giving is called response message. Request message and response message. Type will give you definition about. Type will give you definition about input and output. Okay, all the elements which we are using in the service. The elements and the data types, the meaning of data type, everything is defined. I hope you are clear. Are you clear about this? Let us define one more service. If you are a service provider, how you define it? Tell me how you provide. How do you define the SOPB? Class has to be service starting. Now I want to give. It is good inside an account record, give you ID. Success message and failure message is going to give. What I am going to give? Document. Then we are going to create root element. What is the root element we have? to create. We have status. What was that? Root dot add child element. For the child element we have status. Then we have status dot add text dot success. And we need to give long dot we have root dot add child element ID. So which format of response is easy for us? JSA is bit easy to read compared to XML. For the ID we want ACC. Now it is not success. Then I have to give. Then I convert the data into string result equal to what I need to log dot. What was the service? Here I have defined a superview web service. What is the service I have given? Box. If you give me the name, industry, phone number. If you give me the name, industry, phone number, I am going to create an account record. When I create an account record, it will be success, it will be failure. If it is success, I will give success message. If it is a failure, I will give failure message. The code increases because of XML. The code increases because of XML. Our service is only what? Make a request. You give the following parameters. I am going to insert the record and I am going to say success or failure. I am going to say success or failure. At the end of the game, I will tell you whether my operation is success or failure. Because you are requesting a service, I will tell you whether the request is success or a failure. Once I created the service, if I want to give the service to any third party, what I will do? If I want to give the service to any third party, go back to the third party system. Account, call out service. We had a visual file, generate the visual file. We got the visual file. Take the visual file, open it. Now, how many elements we have? Type. What we have? Service, binding, code type, message type. What is service? What is the service we have? Binding. Binding is the name of the class for which you are. Account call out service. Account call out service. The name of the class in which the services are available. So what is the style we are using? Go to the binding. What type of style is this? Document type of style. What type of style? Document. Now internally what is the protocol they are using? Even though you are using a soap, internally soap will use HTTP protocol only. Internally soap is also using what? HTTP protocol, but not we are not worried about what it is using. Internally is using what? HTTP protocol. So binding will tell you the style. Port type will tell you method. What is the method we created? Create. Message will be create request, create response. Create request, create response. So what is the message? Create request, create response. Message. When you go to the create types, when you go to the types, create response, create. What are the parameters I gave? Name, industry, phone. So element, create request. All the parameters what you pass as input, all of them are considered as one request. In the request, what are the elements are there? Name, industry, phone. What are the three parameters I pass? The name, industry, phone. You also have to pass sequence. Whatever the sequence I have given, name, industry, phone, the same order you have to give. By taking this, you want to perform the operation, give a response. What is the response message is giving you? The response message is giving you, look at this, it's giving you result, which is of, are you getting my point? Are you getting? So tell me what are the elements we have? Your service will tell you, service will tell you, service will tell you what is the port we are using. What is the port, what is the name of the port in which the services are available. Binding will tell you style, which style we are using. Port type will tell you operations which are available in the port. Okay. Then we have message. For every port type, two messages will come. Then type, elements of every operation will be defined in that type. Elements of every operation is defined in that type. Are you clear about the format? Are you clear? People have got it. So what is the, when you are a service provider, if you want to provide the service in the form of soap, if you are a service provider, if you want to provide a service in the form of soap, what you are supposed to do? Define a web service class, convert the FX class into Excel file, use that Excel file to third party people. Third party people will consume it, they will get the code, then authenticate, then consume it. There should be authentication followed by consumption. Authenticate followed by consumption. Are you clear? So how to consume it we'll see tomorrow. But service provider is clear for everyone? Right. Always the service provider is very easy. I told you, it will not take more than half an hour. You know what you are doing, it will not take more than half an hour. So you can build it. The service consumption is the problem. Always let it be a REST API or SOAP API, service consumption, because when you are a consumer, you have to authenticate yourself. So the authentication process will take a lot of time. Are you clear about this? People are clear? Fine. That's all from my end. See you all in the next session.